Good morning from Washington, and good afternoon to everyone in Europe. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Fred Kemp. I'm President and CEO of the Atlantic Council. And thank you for waiting for us. We're sorry that we got here a little bit late, but there's good reason for that. We've just concluded a private session of the leaders of the Western Balkans 6, who you will hear from shortly. And we also had other participants in the room as well supporting this process. One of them quoted Winston Churchill's famous line, "Never let a good crisis go to waste," referring to COVID and how one could use this period of time to bring the West Balkan 6 more closely together. Another talked about this moment as a historic moment. At this summit on regional economic cooperations, the leaders are taking bold action to stimulate post-COVID-19 economic recovery, boost the region's long-term competitiveness, and strengthen its attractiveness to investors. This is not business as usual. We are delighted in that spirit to welcome you all to our Western Balkans Partnership Summit hosted by the Atlantic Council. We at the Atlantic Council are deeply committed to the Western Balkans and the region's integration into the transatlantic community and, of course, into Europe. Spearheaded by our Future Europe initiative, our work seeks to, first, reinvigorate U.S. engagement in the region. Second, promote a more effective U.S.-European leadership around these issues. And third, foster cooperation among key actors to drive forward a democratic, secure, and prosperous Western Balkans. Today, we had a unique opportunity to build on the tremendous work undertaken by the leaders of the Western Balkans and by international partners in Europe and the United States. The expected economic and social impacts of a historic pandemic demand bold action now if the Western Balkan 6 are not to suffer a sustained setback in economic development and the challenges that comes with it. The meaningful steps the leaders have endorsed focus on 3 areas of action. First, advancing the 4 freedoms of movement for goods, services, capital, and people. Goods, services, capital, and people. Second, identifying shovel-ready investment projects so recovery funds and future investment can be deployed swiftly and effectively. One of the participants spoke that there should be billions of dollars of such projects that will be available over time. Third, ensuring that we track the implementation of these measures. In just a moment, Damon Wilson, our Executive Vice President here at the Atlantic Council, will ask each of the leaders to offer their views. But in advance of that, I want to name and salute each of them. President Penderovsky, President Vučić, Prime Minister Hoti, Prime Minister Rama. Prime Minister Rama, it seems a decade ago that we saw each other in January in Washington, D.C. It's been seems like such a long time. Chairman Telgetia, Minister Sekulic, we are honored to have you all with us, and we greatly look forward to discussing the summit's outcomes with you. After our discussions with the region's leaders, we will turn to key international stakeholders for their responses to the summit and its conclusions. The Western Balkans are vitally important to the transatlantic community, and we will hear speakers from the U.S. Department of State, from the European Commission's DG NEAR, from the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, from the Western Balkans 6th Chamber Investment Forum, and then from Atlantic Council Senior Advisor Jim O'Brien to discuss the way ahead for regional cooperation among the Western Balkan 6. This is an exciting moment. Substantial practical agreement open to and including each of the Western Balkan 6, linked to and embedded in existing regional initiatives and dialogues, sends an important political message about the region's Euro-Atlantic future, the region's Euro-Atlantic future during this time of heightened uncertainty. It is therefore our distinct honor and at the heart of our mission at the Council to host this convening to provide this impetus at a time of doubt and of divergence, and to help move the region ever closer to this goal of a certain transatlantic future for the people across Southeastern Europe. One quick housekeeping note before we begin. This is on the record. We encourage you to join the conversation on social media by using the hashtag #BalkansForward, hashtag #BalkansForward. And you can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. I'm going to turn to Damon now to debrief the sum and conclusions. First of all, I did want to apologize on behalf of Adam Bowler, Chief Executive of the U.S. Development Finance Cooperation, who had hoped to join us by video link. He's with the president. He's got appointments at the White House. He's unable to do so, but he does send to us through his representative, Caleb McCary, and he did so in the private session, that his quotes were, "Please count on the Development Finance Cooperation. They will support this process fully and support it in a significant way." So that's from the Development Finance Corporation. With that, let me pass to Damon, but before I do, I want to thank Jim O'Brien. I do want to thank Ben Haddad, who runs the Future Europe Initiative, Bjorn Fleck, who's done so much work on this, and I hope that Ambassador Bob Gelbart is in the audience, former special envoy for the Balkans and a very important board member for the Atlantic Council, who's been working on Balkans issues for so many years. With that, Damon, let me pass to you.
Thank you so much, Fred. Thank you for kicking us off. It's a real pleasure to be here with everyone. We want to turn to the leaders themselves for their own words, but as chair of our just concluded proceedings, I agreed to share some of our results first. So let me touch briefly on the why, the what, and the how, and then we'll turn to some questions for the leaders who are at the heart of this effort. First, the why. Demanding times demand bold action. You heard Fred quote from some of the participants in the session. The region was already facing headwinds when this historic pandemic hit, threatening people's lives and livelihood. And for the region, some estimate a 15% drop in GDP. It's hit America hard, but we see how it's hitting the Western Balkans hard as well. The leaders with us today recognize that working together is part of the answer, and that's significant. Regional economic cooperation can help accelerate recovery by removing barriers and starting to approximate a single market for the benefit of the people of the region. And so clearly, while the European path is the only way forward for the region, urgent reform now is needed to weather this historic crisis and ensure that those aspirations remain not just credible, but strong. And this requires overcoming this fragmentation of these small markets, the economies, and tackling the reality that the region is not cost competitive when you see trucks and goods that remain idled at the borders. And we discuss some really disturbing statistics that underscore that point. Indeed, the IMF and the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development have done serious studies that confirm the potential for achieving gains of up to 10% of GDP growth. But we're not leveraging that yet. So that leads to the what. So we gathered today to facilitate agreement among the Western Balkans 6 as equal partners. For the first time, bringing them all together at the leader level with the EU, the US, and international regional partners that are so key to advancing this constructive agenda of regional economic cooperation. And together they signed up and agreed to bold action to stimulate the post-COVID-19 economic recovery, to boost the long-term competitiveness of the region, and strengthen its attractiveness to foreign investors, which is why DFC joined with their message. And they understood the need to be ambitious, to raise the level of ambition and ensure that people can see the results. So to that end, here's what they agreed, and we will put this out in writing for all of you. But first, they agreed to implement the European Union's 4 freedoms of movement for goods, services, capital, and people by agreeing specifically to make permanent the so-called green lanes. These were established during the lockdown to ensure the unobstructed flow of goods and priority passage for essential goods across the region, and to make them permanent, to expand the green lane concept to more goods, and I think, and critically, to EU neighbors of the Western Balkan 6 when they meet again in the fall in Sofia. They also agreed to improve the infrastructure at priority border crossings to facilitate this, to work regionally, making relevant bilateral or multilateral agreements open to all of the Western Balkan 6, and to make this visible to the citizens by removing barriers to live, study, work, and visit throughout the region. Second, they agreed to identify a substantial set of shovel-ready investment projects so recovery funds and future investment can be deployed swiftly and effectively. We've got some homework on that. They agreed that these projects would focus on infrastructure, particularly to support green energy efforts, the digital agenda, and job creation. And finally, the how. We know at the Atlantic Council that it's all about implementation. And these decisions are captured in the chair's statement that we'll be releasing shortly, where the leaders agreed to set specific benchmarks to hold the Western Balkan Six accountable for implementation, agreed to specific actors who would track these to ensure implementation of the measures, and tasked their Sherpas who have done tremendous work with following up, where we agreed to assess when they reconvene as leaders at the Sofia summit this fall. So these are not just technocratic matters. Rather, they require political will and leadership. They define statesmanship. And they're about offering the people of the region the prospect of a better life at home. So without further ado, I want to turn to our honored guest as we debrief the summit conclusions and hear about next steps forward from them. So with that, maybe I can turn to President Stevo Pendarovski first. President Pendarovski, let me just ask, North Macedonia has had a crucial role to play in supply chains throughout the region and into the European Union single market. For example, your country can gain from enhanced economic opportunities in the wake of PRESPA to accelerate commerce from Greek ports to the rest of the region and into the EU. What is your specific perspective on the need for and value of regional economic cooperation in this moment today?
So hi, Damon. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. President.
Hi, Damon. Once again, and regards to everybody during this public session, we have already seen each other during the private one or closed one. Now referring to a question, in essence, we are speaking about Corridor 10, which up to the signing of the PRESPA agreement was not used. Everybody knows that in full capacity. Until 2018, believe it or not, Skopje and Athens have not in place any single bilateral agreement signed. And despite the general perception about PRESPA, the agreement is paying a lot of attention to the economic cooperation in a number of provisions. In short, in the document, North Macedonia and Greece agreed to institutionalize a structured dialogue regarding, among other issues, border procedures, bureaucratic impediments to the free flow of goods, services, people, and capital, the very core of your initial paper. They're speaking about energy connectivity, infrastructure, provisions. There are provisions on investments, tourism, trade, and transport. Provisions for overcoming institutional, administrative, and tax barriers. In essence, everything we are discussing about today. Article 13, I would like to turn your attention to that. Article 13 from the document is very important to us and for the wider region, I believe, because it stipulates that, having in mind our geography, we are a landlocked state. The parties shall be guided by the relevant provisions of the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. In other words, North Macedonia should have unimpeded or free access to the port of Thessaloniki, which is of huge importance to us, to our economy, but I believe for the rest of the Western Balkan economies as well. And of course, of importance for the Greek exports, since Western Balkan is their shortcut to the common European market. I have in front of me some statistics. I would like to bore you with the numbers about the trade and tourism and the complete flow of the people, vehicles, ideas, capital, and so on and so forth between the two countries, comparing the periods before and after the PRESPA agreement was signed. And of course, not including the period when Corona started. And in short, it is showing a clear increase in the trade between Greece and North Macedonia, but between Greece and the rest of the European Union market, but going through our territory. So to go on to your question once more, it is true that the PRESPA agreement was a kind of a huge enabler, I would say, of the pan-European trade, not only speaking about the bilateral cooperation in that area between North Macedonia and Greece.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Good to hear you from Skopje, and thank you for those words. I want to turn next to Prime Minister Rama. In Tirana, you were an early champion of greater regional cooperation, and in fact, You suggested that the Atlantic Council convene this leaders gathering when you were here with us in Washington in February before we unfortunately had to shut down our transatlantic travel. Can you explain to us what's driving your engagement on this issue, and specifically why is it a priority now? How do you think this helps the region as a whole?
Thank you, Damon, and let me first read also our dear friend, and when I say our, not only our Albanian, but as region, Fred Kempe, who made the introduction, and he practically killed the beginning of my intervention by mentioning Churchill. Don't waste a good crisis. So, having seen behind him a book of Van Gogh, I would go to Van Gogh and would start by saying what Van Gogh said: great things are done by a series of small things brought all together. And I strongly believe that the series of small things, the steps one by one that we have envisaged as part of this big dream of region that develops through peace and cooperation are crucial, and are more crucial now than they were before the pandemic. I strongly believe that the pandemic gave us proof, if it was needed, that what we are trying to do since now 6 years, when the Berlin process started, is exactly what the future generations of our region need. According to the EBRD, the Western Balkans are expected to be hit by a recession of approximately 8% and in 2020. And it looks like in the prediction is the region that will be hit the mostly, or among the regions that were taken in consideration by EBRD. Each of us has been hit in different ways, some by fragmentation of value chain, others by fragmentation of supply and production chains, and us, for example, or others as us, by dramatic decreasing number in tourism and service economy. So in these circumstances, I think that where we lag behind individually, we can compensate. We can compensate by more and faster cooperation, more in the sense of going faster exactly in this small series of things that we mentioned also before, and that are perfectly mentioned also in the common draft statement. But to not repeat what we have repeated since now ages, because years have passed very fast, I want to say that we need a practical plan for the economic integration of the region, which is driven by clear results and deliverables, which is implemented and better monitored. And when I say better monitored, I mean by us as leaders or as, let's say, responsible representatives in this format, but also including our partners that are here together, who need to also be faster when it comes to accomplish what they have promised in terms of financial instruments. So we initiated in October last year an initiative that didn't aim to overlap or to compete with previous ones, and let alone with the common goal of a European integration. And I happily saw Dragica here joining us, and she knows. So it's not about overlapping, it's not about competing initiative, but simply to push further and to give more responsibility to ourselves and take more responsibility, not in terms of disengaging from irreplaceable partners and friends, but in terms of not underestimating the potential of our own self-region and our own self-political and knowledgeable capacities. So I think that it's clear today, it's very clear today, to me it has been clear before, that whoever complicates with whatever arguments this process makes it just based on political judgments and on short-sighted political views. It's absolutely nonsense to not engage fully in this, all of us, all the countries, because we talk about the 4 freedoms of European Union. And faster we are able to implement these 4 freedoms in our own physical space as one, better will be in terms of the people's life, in terms of facing even the challenge that we all have to face during and after this pandemic. So to not take more time, I would say, as we promised last November in Tirana, in the framework of what I have called and will continue to call Western Balkan Schengen, welcoming whoever wants to be here but not mention the word Western Balkan Schengen. We must bring results in all that has been absolutely very specifically and rightly reiterated in the drafts. So, of course, this will require, I say it again, that our friends and partners are here with us not only in words but also in deeds. Sure, I'm not saying that they have not been, but I'm saying that as we have not been enough capable to transform the words in deeds, they have not been too, frankly. So it's a great news that the U.S. Development Finance Corporations is engaging, for the moment in words, but I very much hope that it will be the case also in deeds. So with all the international financial institutions and especially with the EU in the driving seat of this process, with the Atlantic Council joining, we are in a better and better company. But it's essential to be able to deliver. And the last word connects with what I guess Alexander said in the previous chat we had about the text we have in our disposal. I join him in praising whoever engaged and coordinated the text, for sure Jim, for sure Damon, for sure whoever else, but it's very important to not forget our people. This text is the result of great work of our people, all the people that have been engaged in all the countries, which shows that we have our home know-how about what needs to be done. Now the challenge is to do it, and in Tirana, if I'm not wrong, and Veva Calavera can check, because in EU they always take note and they check. But I think we talked about the scorecard, the idea of preparing a scorecard of the implementation of commitments, and the RCC, if I'm not wrong, engaged to have a role in helping this scorecard to be implemented. It's important to do it, and I fully engage on behalf of my country, my government, to move forward on that, and I invite all the other colleagues to move forward on that. And I fully support whoever before me said that as easy as we can gather when we are phone called by the Atlantic Council or by the EU Council or by whatever English-speaking council, we can do it in English among ourselves, and we can do it monthly. In this format is very easy, monthly, to go through the implementation. And if you, I mean the Atlantic Council, and also the others present here, RCC and EU and whoever, would spare a bit of your time to join and to follow, would be of a great help. But I think it's time to do things. I think we need to go faster, and we need to really not listen to whatever politicization of this process is, because it has never helped to forget the people and care more about the politics of our own self-agendas, and to tackle this post-pandemic or during and post-pandemic period with more conviction that together we can unleash a potential that is there since many years and is waiting for people and waiting for leaders to be transformed in a benefit for the sake of all the people, indifferently of their ethnicity, differently of their language or their color, of their whatever that makes them different, and this or their religion. And this is the beauty of the Balkans, and we should go for beauty, not for the terror of it. Thank you.
Mr. Prime Minister, more faster results orientation. I will say this is what distinguishes this as a region, an effort led by the region, where your teams have done the heavy lifting. You've done the heavy lifting for us to facilitate. We will hear from the European Commission, the Regional Cooperation Council, US officials after the leaders. But with that, I want to continue the conversation and welcome Prime Minister Hoti to the platform. Mr. Prime Minister, a key element of today's agreement is that every step to facilitate regional commerce is open and available to every Western Balkan Six party. We've really helped establish a fresh way forward here today. And how does this type of multilateral economic cooperation benefit those who live in the region? Over to Pristina.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Wilson, and let me thank you again for this organizing this event, and I'm really honored to be able to speak to all of you again and to this large number of participants in this video conference gatherings. Now, let me answer this way. We have worked a lot to integrate the region, but we have to admit that the region is still to a large extent fragmented in terms of economic integration. Why? Because there are still barriers in terms of bureaucracy, with a number of issues that should be addressed in terms of legislation maybe, and removing a long list of barriers, as well as in terms of infrastructure, so technical barriers. We still do not have full links, infrastructural links between our countries and capitals. So the region is still fragmented. What I can see today, and from previous meetings as well, is that there is full willingness among all leaders of the region to work together in trying to remove these barriers immediately and to engage in large-scale projects that would link our capitals and our countries. And it's great that now this multilateral approach of cooperation and the idea that if two countries have a bilateral agreement, that agreement should be available and those conditions should be available to all other countries. I think that would help to immediately and very fast to remove the bureaucratic barriers that we have among each other. I think this is the only way for us to complement each other. Because as I said previously, our economies taken individually are small in terms of market power and market demand. If we manage to work together, I think we could complement each other. And second, we can make use of economies of scale between each other, especially in some sectors where we can work together, we can complement each other. And we could be attractive to countries beyond this region. So thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister. I appreciate that. I want to turn to Podgorica, to Minister Sekulic. I have to say, I'm joining you here from Washington. I have a slight preference, perhaps, that we all be gathering in Budva right now. But for you, it's an important time for Montenegro. You're headed into elections while also leading the movement toward European Union accession and integration in the region. And Montenegro has been a consistent voice in support of greater regional cooperation around growing a green economy. So where do you see the greatest investment potential in the region? Madam
Thank you, Damon. Thank you for this opportunity and for organizing all of this to meet each other, even in this kind of the atmosphere. When we are talking about movement toward the EU, as you know, Montenegro recently opened its last chapter in negotiation process with the EU. We deem it is a very important message for our country and our citizens, but also for our neighbors. It shows that the accession process even sometimes may look slow and complicated, awards hard work, and that we are on a good way. We invested a lot in harmonizing our legislation with EU rules, and we made our business environment very familiar to the European investor. And when you mention the election, majority of the political parties are talking as much and more from elections to elections about our way toward EU, which is really good signal for our society. When we are talking about the regional initiatives, for us, it is of the utmost importance that all regional initiatives are brought into mutual harmony, and that in each of them we recognize a chance for further progress to achieve the standards required for full membership in the Union and accession to the EU single market. Our message there is simple. When we cooperate regionally, let's do it in a way that will speed up the EU accession process for each of us based on the individual merits. And now directly to your question, the greatest investment potential in all of our countries are green and digital infrastructure projects. We have smart and good workers. We still do have a chance to save our environment from heavily polluting technologies, but we have to provide a decent base, wide roads, affordable and reliable clean energy, healthy food. And that will make our countries evolve from a pleasant place to spend a holiday to a pleasant working destination. Our differences shall be our strength. We do not have to have the same strategies, we do not have to promote same sectors, but we have to enable that the best from each of us and our neighbors can smoothly spread. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Minister. And you helped pick up on some of the questions that are coming in the Zoom chat about how this relates to other regional initiatives. I do want to encourage everyone to use the hashtag #BalkansForward to keep your questions coming. Valerie Hopkins will help me pick up on some of those as we transition. I want to turn to Chairman Tegeltia, if I may. We recognize the significant work required in Bosnia-Herzegovina to advance greater regional cooperation and its benefits for your citizens. And you've acknowledged that when you look at the lines of the trucks of these borders, we know we have work to do. So you've called out what needs to be done. How will today's advances towards EU benchmarks help benefit not just Bosnia-Herzegovina, but the region as a whole? And as you answer this, I just want to remind our guests that you can use the translation function. If you click on English icon on the bottom right of your Zoom box, you'll be able to hear the chairman in English. Please, over to you.
Thank you very much. We are looking 1,000 kilometers of people on the border crossing. It looks very demoralizing for all citizens, especially for people who work in the transport and industry. This situation is no better for transport of tourists who come to our country by cars or by coaches. We have situation that somebody from our neighboring country or EU countries, they need several hours to come to Bosnia and Herzegovina to have their vacation. And their waiting time is even longer at the border crossings. They're waiting for a couple of hours at the border crossing. Our citizens waiting for hours, while citizen EU only passing quickly border crossings. We're looking for a universal solution and to reduce too many people at the border and our access at the borders in the EU. And our aim is to be equal partner, a member of EU, and have easy crossing amongst us. We know that is not a realistic solution, but there is enthusiasm on our side in countries, Western Balkan, but there has to be enthusiasm from EU. How to sort this, find solution in regard to transport? We have to invest in infrastructure and try one part of transport which exists between our country and the Western Balkan and connect with the train transport which we used to have, and especially to invest in the border crossings, improve infrastructure, and allow people to quickly reach border crossings. And because people are staying too long at the border crossing. Infrastructure investment will not we have to invest in our people who work at the border crossing in order to function as an institution from both sides of borders. Green corridors shown good sides of agreement before COVID-19. But some institutions work for 12 hours. Process in all of our administration. I really want to, we hope that we will at summit in Sofia, we will agree about investing in infrastructure, and there will be enough level people who will be interested to connect countries of Western Balkan. At the end, I want to add, it's very important for us in Bosnia and Herzegovina that this is very positive and acceptable. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us from Sarajevo. I now want to shift to Belgrade. President Vučić, you have been focused on growing Serbia's economy, and the region is taking important steps forward today. So how does this impact the prospects for further regional growth while still advancing toward EU green and digital goals? What do you want to see come next? And perhaps there have been some comments in the Zoom coming in about how does this really help tackle the issue of brain drain and providing a pathway for people at home. But over to you in Belgrade.
Thank you, Damon, once again. You know, to tell you the truth, no one else has said it so far. I hate this. Firstly, we had a very, dare to say, productive private session, and now we have to act as politicians, you know, because everybody is watching this, which will always bring, and it has already brought something different, you know, some different voices. Anyway, once again, would like to praise your great work, Damon, and Jim's great work on, and together with all our people on this very concrete paper, which is often utmost significance for us in Serbia, and wanted to emphasize several facts. You notice that everybody was speaking about European investment package that we are waiting for, and we are profoundly grateful to Europe on that, and we in Serbia wait for that as well. But I wanted to stress just one thing. Our trucks, they wait at internal borders for 26 million hours annually. And if you analyze that situation, you can come up with a conclusion that we can save up to 7% of operational costs if we cut all these procedures, all these bureaucratic procedures and everything else, which is, the conclusion is we can save more money than we're gonna get from anyone from the world. It means that we should stop underestimating our power, something that is in our hands. We should change ourselves. We should work more dedicatedly on this region. We should do our best to build the real trust and confidence between us. Because when you rally us, when you gather us, we always accept participation in different events because we don't want to be punished, and we don't want to be a sort of black sheep, you know, because you guys are the only one who didn't participate in that event. And it's, you know, just another event and nobody cares about it. I really think that this Eddie's idea is a really good idea, that we should accept it. It's an idea. He had a very good idea on a 5G network as well, but this one, it's even more important to all of us, which is we should create this sort of summit once a month. And if we do it once a month, then we can do this tracking implementation that we have discussed so far. And I'll tell you one more example why that is very important for us. We started speaking about 6-7 years ago under the auspices of Angela Merkel in Berlin about building that highway between Niš and Pristina, which is something very, very important, something very tangible. Although we had political problems to sell it here in Belgrade, I think that was very important for Serbian people, for Albanian people as well, something that will create better environment for all of us. Now we're going to start constructing that highway after 7 or 8 years. We need to be much faster. It's not Angela Merkel that is that was late in bringing some decisions, in resolving bureaucratic issues, red tape issues and everything else. It's us. And now we resolved everything with EIB, and hopefully we're going to do it. And I think that's something that can create a different atmosphere between all of us. We can go to Durrës because for the first time, to Saranda. I've heard for the first time some people liking that part of Albania, their beaches and everything else. But people will get to know something different which they haven't done so far, and vice versa. Albanian people will come to Belgrade, and not only to Belgrade, to different parts of Serbia, and will start liking our country, and that's what I'm very certain about. Wanted to say that it's very important that Caleb McCary participated in this event, Matt Palmer as well, and I just wanted to ask once again Mrs. Genoveva about green lanes with European Union countries, which is once again of an utmost importance for us. And if Atlantic Council is too busy, I have this just to add something to Eddie's proposal that we can use RCC more, and Melinda can bring us together. We have no problems with that. Once a month, and I think it should be discussed by us, every single issue. Why that, what Mr. Tegeltia has just mentioned, why we have some border crossings which are open for 12 hours, not for 24/7, with veterinary and phytosanitary inspections and everything else, and why we can do it, why we cannot do it in a much more efficient way, really swiftly and smoothly. And I think that these are very, very important issues for an entire region. And at the end, I know I do understand all the political differences as political veteran. There is at least one country that would like to escape from the region. There is well-known political clash between Belgrade and Pristina. It's not a fault of Abdullah Hoti or of, dare to say, even of myself. We'll have to do our best at least to try to resolve that issue, although I'm not absolutely optimistic about it. And there are some other issues, of course, between us, also within Bosnia and Herzegovina, and bearing in mind that I think that this issue of creating better economic environment, creating a common market in the future, and I want to say that 17% of our overall export, speaking about Serbia's export, goes to Western Balkan 6, which shows that this is the second biggest and the second most important market for us after European Union, which is around 66-67%. And we do accept all the proposals done by Dragica, all the others, speaking about this document, and wanted to add something else. I see that Eddie and myself, we are the most enthusiastic about this sort of cooperation. Sorry that I'm noticing it, and I think that everybody else noticed that, and I hope, of course, Steva as well, and I hope that all the others will think the same very soon. And even, it doesn't matter whether we are ahead of some countries on our EU path or something like that. Even if we join European Union before some countries, will remain in the region, and the cooperation between us within Western Balkan 6 will remain the real priority of Serbia. And we belong to the Balkans, we'll never escape from the Balkans, and we want to cooperate and we want to create the very best economic environment, not only for Serbia, not only for our country, but for all of us, for all of you, our friends, and hopefully we'll be successful. If we resolve all our problems, we'll be more appreciated and more respected, even from European Union and US as well. And we need to work together. All alone, and doesn't matter how big we are, and we are all very small, we can't reach and we can't get anything. If we are all together, we can get something at least. That would be my conclusion. Once again, congratulations on a really, really good paper with a good content, and we'll do our best to tracking implementation of everything that we have discussed today. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Appreciate those words, and particularly the emphasis on follow through. You've posed some questions to our European and American colleagues who will be up next. Valerie Hopkins can lead them through to help answer some of those. Just want to close this part of it by recognizing the Western Balkan 6, that the power lies in the fact that it is the leaders acting together to move forward a positive common agenda that at the end of the day is about the people of the region. So I want to thank the leaders. I want to thank you for your hard work in the run up to today. Thank you for your commitments today. Apologize to our audience that we were running somewhat behind, but because this was a real working session to agree some important issues, we wanted to focus on getting the results done. So thank you for bearing with us. So with that, we're going to conclude our conversation with the leaders, and I'm going to transition to Valerie Hopkins, who most of you in our audience know very well if you follow the Balkans. She's going to lead us through the next part of the program. Valerie is, of course, the Southeast Europe correspondent of the Financial Times. She knows the region intimately well, has been writing on these issues. Valerie, over to you.
Hi, David. Thank you so much. Thank you very much to the Atlantic Council for inviting me. And I'm really looking forward to our part of the panel. I hope that we will be candid and open and honest. And as President Vučić said, there was a real discussion going on. A lot of, we were spared the sort of political niceties. I was not privy to that discussion, so I was hoping actually to ask Jim O'Brien, who's the senior advisor to the Atlantic Council's Future Europe Initiative, if you could give us some of the key takeaways and maybe tell us if there were some breakthroughs and what you think are the most important elements of the discussion that was just had.
Thanks, Valerie. Yeah, it was a good open discussion. So I'll try to offer a little bit of context and respond to some of the questions that have been propped up on the chat function. I think the heart of this whole process is that we wanted to try to set a level of ambition for the existing processes. So the others on this panel work in their day jobs to encourage European integration and greater regional economic integration. And what we needed was for the leaders to say how ambitious they wanted the region to be emerging from the pandemic crisis, and as well as the need to make transitions in the green and digital area. So what happened around that effort? The first is a recognition of the huge opportunity in front of them. So the IMF has said that the states in the region can have a 10% increase in their GDP above pre-pandemic levels if there's greater regional integration. And I think Susanna will talk a little more about work the EBRD has been doing about that. This opportunity only grows because in the aftermath of the pandemic, more and more companies are going to be interested in bringing their supply chains closer to Europe. And that's a huge opportunity for this region of 18 million people. So how do they plan to take advantage of this? They want to, first off, just see the existing processes be as ambitious as they can. And so Melinda will talk about how the RCC, heading toward the summit that will be held in Sofia in November, is going to be able to push for even more initiatives that will show citizens of the region opportunity in front of them. What are some concrete things that have come out of this meeting? And I'm just going to take 90 seconds to walk through a few. The first is, frankly, the fact that all 6 sat down together and endorsed an ambitious program. That's something that publicly hasn't happened for several months. We'll have a long gap between Zagreb in May and Sofia in November, and during that time, 4 new or renewed governments. So now we have everybody signing up to support it. It's also helpful that they did this in a venue that was transatlantic. The Atlantic Council served as host for this in order to emphasize that in the United States, there is strong, bipartisan, lasting support for the programs underway to bring the region closer to Europe and to engage through the RCC, the European Commission, and the Western Balkans Investment Framework to support this. And it was really important, I think, that the U.S. Development Finance Corporation participated and indicated its strong support for working with these processes and for investment in the region as well. Now, specific things. The first commitment here was to deepen regional integration even more. Obviously, these are statements people make all the time, but here you had all 6 saying them, and in particular, they identified two principles that will guide them as they prepare for the ongoing work. The first is they want to see the green lanes at borders made permanent and then expanded. So the work over the next months will be how far can they be expanded to include EU neighboring states, to identify new goods that can be added. This is incredibly important. A reason that the Western Balkans is not benefiting from its proximity to Europe is that it simply takes too long to move people and goods around within the region. It's 26 million hours a year of trucks sitting at borders, people having difficulty working, studying, traveling around the region. And now those things will be addressed over the next months. The second thing is a real commitment to treating agreements as regional agreements. So we talked about the importance of any bilateral agreement serving the broader regional goals, but also being open to everyone. So this way, when some states rise up, they'll pull others along with them. And for all 6 to sit and say that right now is a really important objective. 2 more points from me. We discussed the need to have investments be shovel ready. So there's a process that VEVA is overseeing of having each country identify priority projects for investment. Some of those will be long-term infrastructure investments critical for the transitions the region needs. But some of them can be have immediate impact. And so the leaders agreed that they would start focusing on projects that could bring results to people soon. And this is a change in emphasis that's important, and it brings with it, I think, a couple of practical steps. The first one is that the leaders acknowledge they have to do work at home. So the work starts at home to make sure projects are actually prepared, that processes are in place, that reforms are there, and that the political impetus to see the projects brought forward is completed. And to that end, Prime Minister Rama suggested that the leaders meet very often regularly, even just amongst themselves or with help from Melinda and her team. The Atlantic Council, I'm sure, will be happy to help so that they maintain a process of kind of steamrollering over any obstacles to moving forward. Along that lines, the final piece that they discussed was the importance of showing their citizens that they're delivering, of having an ongoing monitoring effort. And Marco Cadiz is with us today, and he can talk about how businesses in the region will be providing feedback on how well they think reforms are being implemented. And there'll be a new effort to have a mechanism accessible to citizens to be able to see that border crossings, in fact, are open 24 hours a day, or that reforms are put in place, and maybe allow citizens to comment on that. And we'll be developing those over the next months as well. So there's essentially, I would say, and in the questions are, many people noted that there are many initiatives. There are. The point here is to create more headroom so that the other people on this panel have space to do their jobs better and more quickly. And that's the message the leaders wanted to try to leave from this session. So with that, Valerie, back to you, and I look forward to what others have to say.
Thank you so much, Jim, for that really comprehensive overview and for sort of laying the foundation for this discussion. Maybe we should turn first to Genoveva Ruiz Calavera, who's the director of the Western Balkans at the DG NEAR of the European Commission. Genoveva, we keep meeting here on Zoom. I'm wondering if you can share your assessment of the summit. What you think are the concrete things that should happen in terms of regional economic cooperation between now and Sofia, and what do you see from the discussion as making the most important difference? I mean, we've heard talk about expanding the green lanes. Maybe you already have some timeline for when we can see the first groundbreaking on one of the future soon-to-be shovel-ready projects.
Thank you very much, Valerie, and of course, thanks to the leaders of the region, because I think the most important part of today's summit is this very strong message that comes from them, that they own the regional cooperation. It's their region, they see the benefits of working together, and we can only, as the European Commission, support that, because this has been from the beginning, from 5 years ago when we launched the Berlin process, one of the main objectives we had, to see this region overcoming the many obstacles that still remain for the free circulation of goods, people, services, and capitals, and to make sure that we overcome this fragmentation that makes the region less attractive for foreign direct investment. And I think this is a very powerful message, because what we see at the end of the day is many of the obstacles are just in the administration. So if the leaders show that very strong determination, I'm convinced that we will be able to work much better. And the regional organizations that are supporting these processes as well, many of the blockages that we see in the discussions in those organizations, I'm sure they will be much easily overcome with this commitment from the leaders really percolating within their organizations and governments and administrations. So we're here to help as much as we can, because we believe in the advantage of this. We believe this is extremely important, and that's why the European Commission, the European Union, stands behind the creation of the regional economic area, which is very ambitious, as ambitious as the leaders want to make it. And we're very happy that the regional organizations are already working to develop that vision together with, you know, people like the Chambers of Commerce, Marco Cadets, and the Chambers of Commerce of the region are going to come, the voice and the vision of the private sector. So I think that we have all the elements, and we have, of course, a very substantive amount of funding that will come from the European Union, because now we have the MFF have agreed 12.5 billion for this region in the next 5 years. And in addition to that, this builds on the 3.3 billion that the region has as well received from the European Union, announced in Zagreb. So I think we have the funding with the political willing, and of course we have other investors like the US that want to come into the region, which of course they are welcome. So the situation is promising. And the fact that we have this ownership by the leaders of the region certainly gives a lot of hope for the work that we can do together with the regional organizations in getting to Sofia with a very ambitious vision that is translated into a very clear roadmap of what needs to be done and by how and when, so that we see this translated into tangible benefits from the people of the region and the economic operators of the region, and for the EU, because I agree we are willing to continue interlinking the region to the European Union. The Green Lines will be one of the many different issues we're doing to increase the connection of the region to our EU internal market as a step in the progress of the region towards the European Union as well. Thank you, Valerie.
Thank you so much, Eva. Maybe we can cross back over the Atlantic and go to Matt Palmer, who's the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for European and Eurasian Affairs with responsibility for the Western Balkans. You know, the U.S. has been a longtime partner in the region, but there's been some disagreements lately, a bit of transatlantic tension over Washington's role in recent years. I'm wondering what you see and what you've seen from this summit as the most realistic contribution that Washington can bring now when it comes to transatlantic cooperation regarding the Balkans. Thanks.
Thanks very much for that, Valerie. And I would encourage you not to believe everything you read in the papers. In truth, the relationship between the United States and the EU, it has been, continues to be, will be, as long as I have anything to say about it, one that is fundamentally cooperative. We have the same shared vision for the future. We see the Western Balkan countries as members of the European Union, as countries that have made the reforms that are necessary in order to advance that vision, and the United States and the EU are working in partnership in pursuit of that. I would point to a couple of recent achievements that I think reflect the depth of that partnership. The first would be North Macedonia and Albania making the reforms necessary to persuade the European Council to open the accession negotiations with those two countries, to open up a clean, clear European path for both Skopje and Tirana. The June 5th agreement in Albania on electoral reform, it very much reflects close and cooperative partnership between the United States and the European Union. And most recently, the agreement in Mostar in Bosnia-Herzegovina that creates the opportunity for the first municipal elections in that city in a dozen years. Again, a function of close US-EU cooperation and partnership. And now we see here, in the case of the Serbia-Kosovo dialogue, Miro Lajcak, on behalf of the EEAS, convening the leaders of Serbia and Kosovo to talk about the path forward to the full comprehensive normalization of the relationship, and the United States strongly, publicly supporting that process and Lajcak's role and encouraging the parties forward. So I think there's a lot of substance to the transatlantic nature of our in the Western Balkans, and I think that's positive for the transatlantic relationship, and I think it's essential to the future prospects, the European perspective of the countries of the Western Balkans.
Thanks, Matt. Sorry, there was a bit of a lag there. I just, have to intentionally provoke a little bit sometimes. It's my job as a journalist.
Sure.
And I did read actually about all of those developments in the newspapers, but unfortunately not all of them in mine. So, I mean, do you want to highlight anything, I guess, a bit more specific in terms of what Washington can do to push this agenda forward?
Absolutely. I think that what we can do is we can support and encourage the countries of the region as they come together themselves to put ideas on the table to advance cooperative approach to shared challenges. I think the Green Lanes Initiative is one excellent example of this. I know Kayla McCary is on the call, and DFC is prepared to put money into joint projects. With respect to the Green Lanes, we have been partnering with the countries of the region in support of the technical arrangements that are necessary to implement this. We're working together with our partners in Brussels, with EEAS, with VEVA and the Commission, in support of institutionalizing these arrangements that were put in place as a temporary response to the challenges of COVID-19, making this a more permanent landscape. I'm particularly attracted to this idea of expanding the Green Lanes concept to include not just a greater variety of goods, but to also expand and deepen linkages between the Western Balkans and the European Union on trade. The idea that you could have a Green Lane connection with Croatia, with Hungary, with Greece, I think is a tremendously productive and positive idea. And the United States is prepared to work with all the countries of the region and with the European Union in support of that goal. So I think there's a lot that we can do. We have been encouraging the so-called mini Schengen initiative from the get-go and encouraging other countries in the Western Balkans to take part. I think it's also important, and I would underscore this, that even as the countries of the Western Balkans work together to promote regional economic integration, that they need to also do what is necessary in order to advance domestic reforms that will help them move forward on their European path and encourage direct Western investment. I know American companies are going to look not just at the regional climate, they're going to look at the national climate, and they're going to want to know that the reforms are in place, the rule of law is institutionalized, contracts are enforceable, and that they have a predictable economic environment in which they can expect a reasonable return on investment. That's something that we can support politically, something we can support programmatically, and something that we can keep the focus on.
Thank you so much. And just one more follow-up question. I've been alerted to a number of very good audience questions. So I'm just wondering if you see these initiatives as sort of sufficient to push back against, I don't know, or as a counter to some of the rise in Chinese and Russian investments that we've seen in the region.
Well, I think that what we're looking at is we're looking at an environment in which the countries of the Western Balkans are pursuing their goal of a European future. The Chinese investment, Russian investment, I mean, it's normal. And I think it's terrific that the Balkan countries would be open to any investment that comes without strings, that is transparent, that is consistent with the rule of law, that doesn't rely on corrupt practices. All such investment should be welcome. But I think that the countries of the Western Balkans understand as well that their economic future lies in both regional cooperation with themselves, and then integration into the broader European family of nations and the European economic and financial structures that have made the EU successful at what it does. So I don't look at this as competitive. It's not like we're trying to promote Western investment, American investment, European investment to counterbalance Russia and China. What we're trying to do is we're trying to create opportunities for growth, trying to create jobs, trying to create a positive economic future for the countries of the Western Balkans predicated on rule of law, cooperation, transparency, good governance, accountability. This is the best possible future for the Western Balkans, and it represents the best possible climate for the United States as well.
Thank you so much. Why don't we move on to Mylinda Bregu, who's the Secretary General of the RCC. Sad to see you on Zoom and not in Sarajevo, where we met the last time, right after the earthquake in Tirana. I wanted to ask you, the Prime Minister Rama and as well President Vučić both alluded to the kind of uncertainty or apprehension maybe that some countries have had for increased regional economic cooperation. And I wonder if you can speak a little bit about whether you feel like some of those fears were allayed and the gaps bridged a bit by today's summit, and sort of what role you see the RCC playing in this initiative.
Valerie, thank you very much. We all know that Balkans faces time after time unpredictable shocks, so from political instability to health pandemics, natural disasters. So it looks like each year new challenges arise to test the resilience of the region. About the meeting today and what we are doing. I feel that the meeting is merging, so RCC now and Atlantic Council by having this summit today. So we are merging into the agendas that have room to grow in the region. So we've been, as I said, to the restricted session, we've been discussing with Jim and his colleagues at Atlantic Council, with our team, meeting with Sherpas of the prime ministers in the region. And now I can say proudly that we have a clear plan. So the action plan on the roadmap on the new phase of regional economic integration, or the REA 2, as we call it shortly, that we look forward to be endorsed by November during the Sofia summit. We have a timeline until, let's say, October, and we have people and partners that are committed to work in that. So in this action plan that RCC is facilitating and coordinating as well, we have an all-inclusive agenda of the region. So if we heard today most of the focus on the 4 freedoms, the action plan on the regional economic integration that expects to be endorsed by Sofia summit has other areas as well that goes beyond 4 freedoms. So it may start today with 4 freedoms, and 4 freedoms are part of this action plan that we are developing. So we'll be as well focusing on the areas of regional investment space, on the digital market, on the integration in European value chains, innovation, green lanes that was mentioned time after time today in here. It was an experience for us that we should hold together in this new normality. So the plan entails measures such as extending the green lanes beyond only emergency goods, and also with neighboring EU member states to join the single euro payment area, the agreement on the freedom of state, the movement, the facilitation on the movement of ID cards. And this was expressed openly as well, and we are tasked and asked by both chairs of the Sofia summit to work on that. And you'll remember that that was one of the ideas that we shared last year in Poznan. If people cannot move at least freely in the region, then the sense of the mobility and the sense of economic integration is always going to be harmed. So for us, these are all important agendas: removing barriers for the e-commerce and for the digital content goods. And as well, yes, we have an approach that we are working and should be developed. Prime Minister Rama mentioned that, Prime Minister Vučić as well a bit, which is the scorecard. So how can we measure the implementation of what will be endorsed and achieved during this month? So we do hope that the new roadmap as well can be used as an important regional transformation tool for enhancing the intra-regional trade and for attracting more investment. So we all know that 70% of the trade is with EU of all the Western Balkans, but the intra-trade among ourselves is still in moderate numbers. But on the other hand, what we keep hearing from the business community of the region is that for them is utmost importance, for 77% of them is of utmost importance, the growing support on the regional cooperation. So they do feel that in trying to strengthen the commercial ties with the Western Balkans region is going to send a positive signal to all the economies. So it should chart our regional economic cooperation trajectory to deliver the practical results and to help the region emerge healthier, I would say, if not stronger immediately from the impact of the COVID. So as I said, I see that there is a room for synergy. We've been kind of taught and hearing a lot during all the years of transformation in the region on the Euro-Atlantic integration. Now it looks that the regional economic integration as well will have the component of Euro-Atlantic synergy. And I just find that we should touch bases more frequently and try to come with concrete agendas. Plus, as it was mentioned, and this is going to be part of the discussions with IFIs as well, the funds that will be available to support the economic recovery, plus the agendas of the regional economic integration that are not only appreciated, but mostly needed after the COVID crisis. So just for you to know, and I know that you would like the figures because you are a journalist, as you said, we count today 1,366,418 people, out of which 736 are females to be registered as unemployed, with an increase of 133,000 people that have been registered only during May time. So 10% increase from April time. So you can imagine how devastating the figures in the region are today.
Wow, thank you. I'm taking notes of those figures. That's for the whole Western Balkan 6?
Yes, for the whole 6.
Wow. Increase of 10%. Okay. Well, maybe we can turn to Shoshana Hargitai to talk a bit more about, from the EBRD, to talk a bit more about the economic recovery plan and the potential economic benefits of increased economic integration. I was actually recently doing a piece about this and searching for new stats, for new estimates about just how much this would benefit the economies of the region. And still the only thing I could find was an IMF study from 2017 that found that the long wait times that President Vučić alluded to, the 26 million hours that the trucks spend waiting on the border, cost an estimated 800 million annually, which is about 1% of the region's GDP. I wonder if you have some more updated assessments of precisely how much this would economically benefit the region if all of the provisions were followed through.
If all the dreams came true. Valerie, I have to disappoint you because I will not go into detailed figures. But what I can offer to you and all the participants is that we are going to publish our little study about regional integration with focus on trading. So we need to slice it. Linda would agree with me that regional integration is more than multifaceted. So we shall share it with you. We shall share it with the participants, our little kind of statistical analysis, but also a couple of arguments. Now, I hope I don't even need to use respect to the 6 leaders from the Western Balkan countries to convince them further about the merits of regional integration. Let me suffice to say, just to share with you a couple of how to improve, at least again, from this angle of trades in goods. Because having the tariffs now removed or re-removed, as some would say, we are facing the non-tariff barriers. So again, as many have said today, thankfully, tangible results by accelerating border crossings. Because further improvements of customs operations and simplified border procedures, there is an ongoing Seed Plus project. So if that is fully implemented, it could result in large benefits by reducing the excessive waiting times at Western Balkan borders. So I'm delighted to hear Green is here to stay, and I keep my fingers crossed and use whatever influence EBRD might have to open similar green lanes towards the EU countries. Number 2 is the need for harmonization and mutual recognition of certificates, starting with the brilliant phytosanitary certificates. There is a project ongoing, but again, implementation has been the word mostly used during also the private part of the summit. So if this project is fully implemented, it would be another step forward. Now, what we have also learned recently is we need to make CEFTA work better. So, for instance, we need to strengthen the enforcement mechanisms of protocols and making dispute resolution more effective, for instance, by delegating dispute settlement mechanisms and implementing decisions to expert bodies. It is as good as the CEFTA agreement can be enforced. Number 2, we suggest to add competition, state aid, intellectual property rights, environmental standards based on EU benchmarks that would help level the playing field for all members of CEFTA and generate more trust among members and create more trade with countries outside the CEFTA. Now, next, which we will also find in their little study that we shall soon share in the coming days, is something where what we discussed already in Tirana back in December, and we discussed it for the last couple of months, which is commitments are great. It's even better to have a scorecard and monitoring. And frankly, just before this event, we had a call with OECD, and we are ready to team up with them to design a scorecard and monitoring framework for the trade of goods, services, and investment space. So that, again, Linda could use it in the Regional Cooperation Council. We shall take inspiration, as always, from Marco Chavez and the Western Balkan Chamber's investment platform. But we are happy to work with it, and OECD is happy also to create this framework and monitor. So we would like to make progress on this so that this could be part and parcel of communication that would come out from the Sofia summit. And Valerie, if you allow me, I would like to say just 3 words about shovel-ready investments. Jim, I know you expected that, because I made comments, and not only once, about the fast disbursement of funding. Funding is galore. I'm sorry. That is not an issue. You have just heard a flabbergasting figure that the European Union is very proud of, that is pure, unadulterated grant plus guarantee. EBRD now have reached annual financing. Last year, 1.3 billion euro in the Western Balkans. This year, yes, we stepped on the gas pedal. It's going to reach 1.5 billion. Roughly 30, I can't say the sky is the limit, but again, we do what we can, and we also had to do quite a bit for SME financing this year. But out of this, roughly in our financing, around 35–40% goes towards infrastructure and energy projects. We have zero problem when we have PPPs or private investors in energy projects. And I think the leaders are aware. Oh, by the way, as somebody mentioned, I cannot help using this opportunity to trumpet once again the success of Albania with the solar photovoltaic plant auctioning. So there is a way to avoid, again, now, not avoid feed-in tariffs, get into the second generation. 2.5 euro cent per kilowatt hour is, as far as we know, at least a European record. And those who are here from across the pond and elsewhere, they could say it's a wonderful price for renewable energy. But going back, so we don't have problems with Nikola Tesla Airport implementation, this Belgrade solid waste PPP, but I still have infrastructure projects from when I was young in 2011 or 2015 still disbursing. So we are happy on the one hand, and we would like to convene a call, and we shall reach out to the leaders by end of September, early October, to get the right ministers in place on how we can accelerate infrastructure project preparation. At the current pace, I will not be able to spend our money, let alone the money that the European Union is providing as grants. So we would like to initiate a call, a very pragmatic, non-political, how to prepare infrastructure projects to be shovel ready. Number two, we are also very happy that we can do on our own to set up a monitoring framework for the flagship projects, if they are in infrastructure energy that is transport elsewhere, so that there is actually a quarterly monitoring of how the preparation and implementation of those projects go. That is both for the citizen, but also for ourselves, and hopefully for the leaders, the governments, of what we need to change to accelerate infrastructure project implementation across the Western Balkans. That's all from me for the time being, Valerie.
Thank you so much, Shoshana, and thank you for giving me actually a few story ideas. I'm going to revert back to you on those. There was one question from the audience, and I will ask it to you since you are still on the screen, and that was a question about beyond economic cooperation, would there be any cooperation on social safety nets? I mean, with this freedom of movement, is there, especially with regard to the
it's not really EBRD's cup of tea. Again, I would refer this, if we were to have, to the leaders, because this is very much national competence. What is it that they can agree with particular regard, for instance, of labor movements across the region and others, but it's not me, alas, Valerie, who can answer this question.
I know, I just know you're privy to some of
you gave it a try, yeah.
Negotiations and discussions. But okay, we are actually quickly running out of time, and it's very nice that you have teed up our final speaker as inspirational Marko Čadež, who is the president of the Western Balkans 6th Chamber of Commerce Investment Forum, and one of the most energetic business community leaders I've ever met. So Marko, I mean, we've heard from you, are laughing you because you also know, I think, and we've heard now from government leaders, from representatives of big international organizations. Can you talk to us concretely about how businesses are profiting from regional cooperation and what you see on the horizon?
Oh, thank you, Valerie, for this kind words. But really, I'm amazed because I see the commitments of the political leaders. I see the commitments of our partners in the EU and USA. And this is something what we really not only appreciate, but are trying to reach in all these years behind us. So if you ask me about can business community be, I don't know, satisfied or be happy with the results of our regional cooperation, it's a clear no. But there is nothing what we should give as a responsibility to any of the partners or governments, because the circumstances are not really easy. Having in mind all the political problems, first between Belgrade and Pristina, then having in mind the whole problems that the economists are dealing with in the region, having in mind the political responsibilities, which are mostly national. So the first thoughts of the political agenda is always a national, not some kind of supranational, having in mind that also this actually can put their economies away. So what we are actually trying to see more, and now we are seeing this, is that the politicians and the political elites and political leaders are putting this regional agenda more and more into the first topic in the priority, not because it is only it is good for the region, but because it is good for them, it is good for the national political agenda. If I want, as a politician in some of our countries, to be re-elected, I need to deliver something. If I want to deliver something, it means I have to take the responsibility for this. And thank you, Matt, for telling us always in every meeting that we had together, but also that you had with the leaders, is take the responsibility yourself. Not wait what is coming from Washington. Do not wait what is coming from Berlin, London, or Brussels. Take the responsibility. And this is something which I think is really, really important. What we as a business community are trying now to push and to be some kind of constructive partner. We cannot make the decisions, we cannot make the laws, but we have some, let's say, not small resources to help. And I think we are representing at least 400,000 enterprises and businesses in this Balkan 6. So it's not a small resource to have. First of all, I think what we are now in the process of is settling the regional business council, which is elected 12 biggest companies, regional players, all of them not only present on one market, but present 6 or 5 or 4 markets from the VB6. They will be, actually the owners of these companies will be the part of this business council, always having day-to-day upgrade and update on the things going on the regional cooperation level. Why? Because we want to establish together with them the very clear KPIs, key performance indicators for the things that we are related to. Mostly these are trade, so let's say mutual recognition of trade documentation, quality of cross-border documentation, movement of labor, regional infrastructure project, non-tariff barriers removal, and so on. So we are actually then focusing on several, I think, crucial, important for the businesses, measures that we will not monitor, but we will really measure, which means our members, which are transportation and logistic companies, will really get the table and measure. Their truck drivers will measure how long they waited for the quarter approximately on different cross-boarding sections. How much their CFOs and CLOs, so chief legal officers and chief financial officer, will give us the time spent and the money spent on administrative costs and administrative time spent for transactions in the region itself, so that we will have a clear, very, very clear data, which we will present every quarter to the head of states. We will also ask our leaders to make possible that we once a month we meet, so 12 of us, 12 of the business leaders, meet with chief of staffs from the heads of states and Sherpas and CEFTA point of contact. I think we need more cooperation between 3 of them. And
Marco, I'm really sorry. I have to interrupt you because I think there's another event that's about to start.
Okay,
but
just for the short record, so this is monitoring KPIs and every month meeting which will be preparation for the RCC, and we will then give this data and this discussion points to the RCC for their meetings with the big guys.
I'm so sorry to cut you off. That's my failure at moderation. I just want to thank the Atlantic Council for inviting me to moderate this discussion and hope we can continue it offline. And I just want to pass the mic back to Damon to close us out.
Thank you so much, Valerie. We gave you an impossible task. So thanks to all the leaders that joined us today, and thanks to the representatives of all the international partners who are so crucial to making this success. Some of the ideas discussed today are clearly not new, but some of the decisions are. And I think the other thing that everyone recognizes is that the nature of the challenge has gotten more difficult because of this pandemic, the situation we're in. And can we use this challenge, this time of adversity, to raise our level of ambition and to find the opportunity in the moment? So I want to thank you for joining us today. I want to thank all the participants. We know at the Atlantic Council that follow through is what's important. We'll play our supporting role. But it's clear that as the region comes together and steps up and gives us a positive agenda to bank, the European Union, the United States, the regional institutions, we at the Atlantic Council can step in and help support. So with that, thank you for joining us today. That concludes our program.